So after I did my session, I completed a cool down. So for my cool down, I made the participants perform just a slow walk and some stretches, and just a bit of a gentle jog. So I did this for the same reason as the cool downs in the training program. So just to return the body to the normal state, etc., etc. Remove. Obviously, a lot of lactic acid is going to have built up because they're working maximally, and especially for quite a long time, the DOMs would be quite real. So just ensuring that they weren't really aching the next day, and preventing the exercise and ache really is the main thing for that. Again, I asked people for stretches just to make sure that they were still getting involved and stuff like that. Also, what I did at the end of the session was get some feedback from the participants. So, I just asked, from a scale of 1 to 5, how much did you enjoy the session? And a scale of 1 to 5, how hard do you think you worked in the session? So it just sort of gave me an idea of potentially how motivating I was as a coach. Making sure they work hard, getting them to work hard, and obviously whether they enjoyed it or not. That's the most important thing. Making sure they had a good time during the session, as hard as it might have been. Probably the main thing that I would say I should have improved on was maybe incorporating some competition into the session, just to motivate people even further, or use a hook like potentially some music. It was difficult because it was outside, so there wasn't really much place to put music or use music, because obviously it's outside, there's no plug, and especially as it's loud, you can really hear it if it was just played quite quietly. So I could have done that. It's probably the main improvement, just to make sure everyone was as motivated as possible, really. Or even if I saw someone struggling, rather than just saying, keep going, keep pushing, I could have joined in with them and done the last 3 press-ups or whatever, trying to get just a few more in, just to really, really keep them going. So I did a risk assessment, obviously, just to point out any potential hazards and identify them so that they could be minimised and the risk of injury could be minimised. Just, simple stuff really, like jewellery obviously is a main one, making sure they take that off, injuries that are already there, making sure they don't make them even worse, stuff like that, the surface, all sorts of things, if there's any potentially might be a few stones or the equipment that they're using, stuff like that was in the risk assessment, so that my session could be passed. Again, said about the PAR-Q and the training programs, did a PAR-Q. This is so that any injuries of the participant could be noted and the correct precautions taken. So if, I had to make sure that I asked, even if they've already put it in their PAR-Q, I had to make sure just before I started the session, just ask if anyone had any injuries, just in case they had forgotten or whatever. And if, if their injury was quite serious, or if they really couldn't do the exercise with it, so say someone had sprained their ankle, they're obviously not going to be doing box jumps because it's going to make it worse, so they would obviously have to sit out or do an alternative exercise. Also, I planned the session before I did it. This obviously helped with the organisation of the session, ensuring I had the correct equipment set up before. I had to make a plan just in case I wasn't provided with equipment that I wanted, so I had to make sure I made a list of things that I needed and ideally would have. Also, just to make any notes about the warm-up and stuff like that, just so I had a brief, had like a little piece of paper in my pocket so I could just check if I needed, but most of the time it was quite easy to go by because I had memorised it quite well. So overall, I felt I built up a rapport with the participants by getting them to do the give the sack stretches ideas, getting them involved. I also built up a rapport by constantly motivating and praising the technique and effort put in by the participants. So as well as, constantly telling them, keep pushing, blah, 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 I'd make sure that I also told them to work at their own pace, but still push themselves, because it's all well, a coach saying, keep pushing, but if someone over at one end can do 15 press ups in a minute and someone else can only, struggle to do one, they're still working the hardest that they can, but it's just different abilities. So you've got to accept that and just let them work at their own pace and let them do what they can. I feel as though that's what they'd want to hear, make them feel more comfortable with their own ability and with what they can do. In order to progress the session, I removed the shuttle runs after the water break. So once everyone had gone through all the stations once, I let them have a water break. I also let them have short breaks, about 10-15 second breaks in between each station, just to let them get their breath back, have a breather, and then go again. But after the water break, I just made both partners work for their at their maximal ability for 30 seconds, rather than just one of them working for a minute whilst the other does shuttle runs and then switch over. I just made them both work solidly for 30 seconds. This is going to help to motivate the participants because they're both completing the exercises together, so they're going to be able to motivate each other and keep each other going. If they're doing press-ups, be like, come on, let's do this. On the other hand, some would see this as competition. So obviously, if two people are doing press-ups, they're going to obviously be like, I want to get more press-ups than my partner. But then in a way this works better because they're going to want to complete more press-ups, for example, so they'll be more motivated to do so, and therefore will be working harder and pushing themselves. So it works both ways. So the main objective really was to target the muscular endurance of the athletes. To improve, I suppose I could have created even more specific targets for the participants for each individual. However, this is a difficult thing to do, especially because all the participants are different and have different abilities. Some will be better at certain exercises than others. Someone might be really good at press-ups, but really bad at squatting, potentially, have a really bad technique. So I could have done that, but it would have been quite difficult to do for each and every participant. But I could have done it, as the session was going on. I did, say to people, come on, 3 more, just 3 more, which is in a way setting a target. So then they're doing, only 3 more press-ups. Another improvement that I could have made in my session is potentially adding weights to those who would have wanted them. For example, used for medicine ball potentially when they were squatting at the squatting station. This could have engaged and potentially excited the participants more. They see an exercise ball and be like, oh my god. But also, it would have ensured they were working as hard as possible with weights. The main strength of my session, I'd say, was the rapport that I built up, because it would have made the participants feel comfortable. Also, the amount of motivation and praise I was providing for each individual during their exercises, motivating them to keep working hard, but ensuring that it's perfectly acceptable to push themselves to their own limits and work at their own pace.